What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Sunday, November 24th, 2024, and I have an emergency alert to share with you guys. Right now it is 17:34 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from the Middle East and Eastern Europe. So last night, Putin's Doomsday plane went to the Ural Mountains. What you're looking at here is Putin's Doomsday plane leaving Moscow, heading east towards the Urals, accompanied by a Russian Air Force airborne command post also going towards the Urals. And in addition to that, we had a U.S. Air Force C-5 Galaxy land in one of the most important NATO bases in Europe, and that's the Putin'S air base in western Poland. And the C-5 Galaxy is the largest military cargo plane that the U.S. military has. So we moved either some really heavy cargo into Poland last night or a lot of cargo into Poland last night. And it's worth noting that this C-5 went to Putin'S and not Rzeszów. Rzeszów is the weapons hub for Ukraine. That's where all the weapons go to Ukraine. And Putin'S is specifically a very secretive NATO base in western Poland. That's where the U.S. has kept B-2s in the past, stealth bombers, F-22s, and other types of highly valuable strategic assets. Okay, so not sure what was in that C-5, but it was in the middle of the night. Also, there was a U.S. C-17 cargo plane that went to Ramstein last night as well. So the U.S. is moving some heavy cargo or a lot of cargo into the theater, and Putin's Doomsday plane went to the Urals for some reason, maybe to plan the next strike on Ukraine or to plan a strike on NATO. We don't know. We know that yesterday, Ukraine launched as many as 10 U.S. ATACMS missiles at Russia again, and this was after Putin launched the Oreshnik IRBM intermediate range ballistic missile at Ukraine and warned that if Ukraine continued to strike Russian territory with Western weapons, that there could potentially be more of these Oreshnik strikes, okay, ICBM strikes on not just Ukraine, but also any country that is supplying Ukraine with these weapons and helping them to strike Russian territory. So he's talking about striking potentially decision-making centers in Europe and potentially striking bases, okay? But we can confirm that yesterday, Ukraine launched as many as 10 ATACMS into the Kursk region of Russia, and the Ukrainian Air Force confirmed today that they hit an S-400 missile defense battery in the Kursk region belonging to the 1490th Air Defense Squadron of the 6th Russian Army. Okay, so Ukraine confirming that they did take out an S-400 system in Kursk, in the city of Kursk, or on the outskirts. The S-400 is one of Russia's best, actually their best, missile defense battery. Okay, so the ATACMS missile destroying an S-400 system. That is extremely embarrassing for Russia, and it's also a very expensive and valuable piece of equipment. Okay, so shortly after that, Putin's Doomsday plane took off to the Urals. So I'm sure Putin is planning something right now. He could strike downtown Kyiv. He could strike Mildenhall or Lakenheath in the UK. He could strike some of the bases in Poland. It's really hard to tell, but Putin is planning another strike soon, okay? And we know that Ukraine is planning more strikes on Russian territory. They're not going to stop because Ukraine has been waiting for 2 or 3 years now to get this capability to use the Storm Shadows, the ATACMS. Now we're hearing that the French have green-lighted the use of the Scalp EG missile, which is very similar to the Storm Shadow, okay, a 200-mile range air-launched cruise missile. And now we're also hearing that Germany may allow Ukraine to use Taurus missiles. So Ukraine is going to take full advantage of it, especially now that Trump is coming in. They may want to strike as much as possible in case Trump decides to change the policy of deep strikes, or if there's some issues with that when Trump becomes president. Okay, and so this is only going to escalate, so please get prepared. I want to just quickly switch to Iran for a minute. We have numerous credible media outlets reporting that Iran is planning to attack Israel very soon. Reuters, citing U.S. intelligence, said Iran will attack Israel soon, and that there was some unusual movements in various missile cities in Iran of missile systems. Okay, so unusual or suspicious movements of ballistic missiles in Iran in missile cities. Okay, and this is citing U.S. intelligence. And we're also hearing from various Middle Eastern sources like Mariv, saying that there's abnormal movement of Iranian ballistic missiles, and it's currently being monitored. And also the Yedioth Ahronoth newspaper is reporting that an Iranian attack is imminent, and Al Ain is reporting that Iran is preparing to attack Israel. So we could potentially see a massive Iranian attack on Israel, a ballistic missile attack at the same time as Russia launches some kind of a massive attack on Ukraine and or NATO, possibly striking decision-making centers with the Oreshnik missile, potentially even nuclear strikes on Ukraine. I want to remind you guys that Dmitry Peskov said last week that if this continues, if Ukraine continues to launch these deep strikes with Western weapons into Russia, that there might be a nuclear response, okay? That's not me saying that. That's Dmitry Peskov saying that. There might be a nuclear response, okay? So this is extremely serious, guys. This could easily escalate into a full-blown war between NATO and Russia, and possibly even a nuclear war. And the French Foreign Ministry has announced that Ukraine has been given the green light to utilize the Scalp EG long-range air-launched cruise missiles to conduct deep strikes against targets inside Russia, with a shipment of over a dozen additional missiles set to arrive in Ukraine sometime in December. Okay, so the floodgates are opening up for Ukraine. All these countries are allowing Ukraine to use their long-range missiles to pound Russian bases deep inside of Russia, and Putin's definitely not going to just sit around and do nothing about it, okay? And Hezbollah launched a massive missile strike on Tel Aviv last night, and Israeli media, citing a security official, said Beirut will be shaken severely in response to the targeting of Tel Aviv. And this all came after Israel leveled an entire building in downtown Beirut, and they took out some kind of senior Hezbollah commander there. So the situation between Hezbollah and Israel is far from over. So very concerning. And the Iranian Tasnim news agency quoted the supreme leader of Iran saying that Iran is ready to strike Israel. Okay, so that's the Ayatollah Khamenei saying that Iran is ready to strike Israel. And the British aircraft carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth has left Hamburg for NATO exercises somewhere in the northern part of Europe. So that's pretty interesting. I don't think it's an exercise. I think it's a deployment. And the Westminster Bridge in London was cordoned off after a serious security incident today. And what's interesting is in recent days, there's been a lot of these strange security incidents in the UK. We had this terminal in an airport in the UK that had to be shut down for an unknown security incident. And then we also had some kind of a suspicious device outside of the US Embassy in the UK. And then there were also drones that were flying over some of the most important air bases in the UK, Mildenhall and Lakenheath. Mildenhall is where the US keeps B-61 nuclear gravity bombs unofficially, and that's where the US has kept B-2s, B-52s, B-1s, U-2 spy planes, SR-71s. Mildenhall was actually used as a takeoff point for SR-71s during the Cold War. They would take off, and U-2s as well. They would take off from Mildenhall and do spy missions over the Soviet Union from Mildenhall. And we had these drones flying over Mildenhall and Lakenheath. Lakenheath is an F-15 and F-35 base. And for those of you guys who don't know, F-15s can carry up to 5 B-61 nuclear gravity bombs each. And the B-61 can have a blast yield of up to 400 kilotons, so almost half a megaton or a third of a megaton, just one of those B-61s. And the F-15Es can carry up to 5 of them, which is more than any fighter jet can carry. Most fighter jets can only carry 1 or 2 B-61s. So these mysterious drones just 2 days ago flying over these bases, and I don't think it's a coincidence, guys. I think those were Russian sleeper cells that were ordered by the Russian government to spy on Lakenheath and Mildenhall to potentially gather intelligence in case of a strike, if they want to strike those bases, or to see what our force posture is like, to see what kind of planes we have sitting over there in those bases, okay? And Russia produces as much weaponry and ammunition in 3 months as the entire EU does in an entire year, said German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius. And the U.S. is close to a decision on the transfer of JSAM missiles to Ukraine, according to Reuters. The announcement of their deliveries is expected to take place by the end of fall. At present, the decision has not yet been made, but it is very close to being made. It is still unknown which version they are planning to transfer, one that has a range of 360 kilometers or the extended range version, which has a range of 900 kilometers. So just so you guys are aware, the JSAM missiles are one of the best that the U.S. Air Force has. They are basically a long-range penetration cruise missile that has an armor-piercing warhead with 1,000 pounds of explosive material. And presently, only Poland, Finland, and Australia have the JSAM missiles. Poland just placed an order for 800 JSAM extended range missiles, which have a range of 600 miles, okay? Poland already has, I think, 200 or 300 of the regular JSAMs. But if the U.S. were to give these to Ukraine, this would be the longest range missile that Ukraine has, and it would also be the only armor penetrating or bunker busting missile that Ukraine has, okay? And Kazakhstan has increased security measures at key military and civilian facilities due to the growing escalation of the Ukrainian conflict, so that's pretty interesting. And NATO is not ready for a war of attrition with Russia, as the arsenals of missiles and drones of NATO countries are not comparable to the capabilities of the Russian arms industry, said Valery Zaluzhny, former commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine. So Ukraine's former top general is saying NATO is not ready for a war of attrition with Russia. And Russia has reportedly recruited hundreds of Houthis in Yemen to fight in Ukraine, according to the Financial Times. These individuals were lured with promises of well-paid jobs and Russian citizenship. So the Houthis, the North Koreans, the Chechens, I mean, who else is Russia going to use to fight in Ukraine? Absolutely insane. And right now, this evening, we have U.S. nuclear forces on high alert. We have 3 nuclear war command and control planes up in the air. These are the Boeing E-6B Mercury planes. They can communicate with submerged nuclear-armed submarines and issue launch orders if necessary, or update targeting information. And they can also remotely launch all of our Minuteman III ICBMs. And here we have some pictures from Russian media showing one of the next potential targets of an Oreshnik strike or ICBM strike from Russia. And this is the Yavoriv base in western Ukraine, located just a few miles from the Polish border. And here's a translation. Apparently, this Yavoriv training ground or base is where NATO forces train Ukrainian soldiers. It also supposedly has an underground NATO military bunker and is also a training base for F-16s. So this potentially could be a target, and it's just a few miles from the Polish border. And I want to just show you guys some video footage coming out of the Netherlands. Apparently, the Netherlands railroads have been placed on high alert to prepare for the possible transfer of large amounts of heavy equipment. Let me just play this video for you. This was taken just 2 days ago somewhere in the Netherlands. You can see all these strikers here and various types of armored vehicles. So massive amount of equipment being moved in the Netherlands, and we currently have most of Ukraine under some kind of an air raid alert. And here's a picture from Beirut the other day after the Israeli strike on that building. They leveled an entire 8-story building where a Hezbollah commander was located. But very, very serious news. Looks like Iran is about to strike Israel. Putin on his Doomsday plane last night, somewhere in a bunker in the Urals by now, probably in Kazvinsky Kamen or Mount Yamantu, commanding the next Oreshnik strike, either against Ukraine or possibly NATO. I think all of this is going to go down before Trump gets inaugurated for various reasons. Number one, Ukraine wants to advance their position as much as possible before Trump gets in, especially with the deep strikes. They want to hit as many targets as possible before Trump gets inaugurated, because Ukraine may be afraid that Trump may reverse these decisions on the deep strikes. And also, Putin is going to want to make all his big moves before Trump gets in office as well, because Putin is afraid of Trump, in my opinion. He knows that Trump is not a pushover. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but I do have my 24/7 stream live right now. I recommend you guys check it out so you can listen to our nuclear forces. I have my own radio system with a 400-foot antenna so I can pick up the nuclear forces of the U.S. and other countries worldwide. Also, there's a lot of people in the chat that post breaking news as it comes in, so it's a free source of information. And also follow me on Telegram and Twitter. I post all my updates over there. The links to my Telegram and Twitter are in the description below this video. And I will be monitoring all these situations. If anything happens, I will go live and update you guys live. But I am expecting Russia to make another big strike on potentially Ukraine or NATO as a result of these ATACMS strikes, and we know that Ukraine is planning more deep strikes, okay? So this is not over. This is just the beginning, guys, okay? This is just the beginning. So make sure you're getting prepared. Make sure you have a bug-out plan. Make sure you have a bug-out bag. Most of all, make sure you have a fallout shelter, okay? And until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.